Hello everyone and welcome to another stream. So in this one, as the title says, and let me just read up the title because I forgot what I titled it. Ukraine War Front Recap. Okay, so we're doing a recap of the Ukraine war, and then we'll be talking about how the Wagner is complaining, or Pirogizhin himself is complaining about some ammunition issues. And then we'll be talking about the offensive, and then we'll be looking at some of the news that have recently happened over the past couple of days. So, starting out with the recap, I'll have one big announcement, and that is I've previously planned on doing stuff like this and no became reality, but I will try really hard to make this a reality. And that is that I'm planning to write a book about the Battle of Bakhmut, and for that I have just started doing a recap specifically for the Battle of Bakhmut. And to do that, I had to draw out what I consider to be the Bakhmut front. So I have done that, and it is from the Vasilivka area to the northeast, towards the canal to the northwest, and along the whole canal, going all the way to Konstantinivka, and down to Toretsk, and then to the eastern parts around this Luhan River. So that is the front line I've drawn out. And so far, for the Bakhmut recap, I've mapped out these all the way to the 20th of January, and then I'm color coding it to every month being a color, so that it is easier for me to get an overview. And then I'll just write a book not only about the territorial advances, but I'll also be going into the details of who fights where, what equipment they have, and all of these things that contribute to how the fighting is going, and the power balance and all of these things. And then sometimes we'll be perspectivating to the front as a whole. But yeah, as we can see, there's all of these things. Then I've also written Ukraine for the ones where Ukraine has advanced, and then RU for the ones where Russia has advanced. So that is what my plan is for Bakhmut, since it has taken over half a year, and it could be a very determining city for this war. It seems to be more important than either Kherson or Kharkiv in this war so far. So yeah, that is my plan. And as you can see, this is the recap. This is all the progress the Russians made, or Wagner made, in February. And the gray one is all the progress they made from 20th to the 31st of January, as I haven't finished it completely. And then I still have the normal recap for the rest of the front lines. We'll be updating as is. And then once the month is over, I'm going to do the same where I put a specific color for February, and then I'll continue doing that for March and so on. So yeah, that is the recap part. And then we can talk about the Wagner ammunition issue. So I don't exactly have anything to show in that regard, as there's been a lot of news and I haven't really collected it. But essentially, there's been a lot of communication from Pirogizhin to the public, where he states that he is lacking a lot of ammunition for his soldiers, for the Wagner soldiers. So he started by revealing that he had this issue and complaining publicly that nothing was being done about it. Then he started complaining about specific people within the Russian Defense Ministry going against him and willingly sabotaging the ammunition for the Wagner soldiers. Then he started by saying that despite all of his connections, nothing was being done about it. Then recently he did two voice messages publicly where he was like very, very angry and basically saying that the Russian government is betraying them, are all traitors, and that his soldiers are dying because of it. And then earlier today, he posted a picture of about 50 plus dead soldiers and then claiming this is Wagner soldiers and they died because of a lack of ammunition. So essentially, he is very, very mad that there is some sort of sabotage when it comes to the ammunition that they're receiving. And he's blaming specifically the defense minister and saying that they are purposely doing this to sabotage the Wagner advances and efforts. So if this is true, then we may see the Wagner PMC just abandoning their post and doing some sort of guerrilla tactics. Or since they are mercenaries, switching sides, that we have seen a lot of that in history, where mercenaries, in case they are losing, they'd rather fight for the winning side and get some money out of it than completely get wiped out. And that is especially when they are being betrayed. And this is a clear betrayal if their ammunition is being sabotaged. Then there's also the possibility that this is just a ruse, because first of all, he has direct connection to Putin, who is like the commander-in-chief of Russian army. So he has more control than Sergei Shoigu, as he can just fire him. So if with these direct connections to Putin, and Putin who has an interest in winning this war, regardless if it's Wagner or Russian army that successfully captures these different cities, it makes no sense for him not to be able to receive this ammunition regardless of that. So what I'm more inclined to believe is this is some sort of ruse just to make the Ukrainian army believe that the Wagner is running low on ammunition, to make them believe that this is the best time to make a counterattack, and then just hit into a Wagner wall that is stopping them. As we see, although the Ukrainians successfully recaptured parts in the southwest of Ivanivske, as well as in the Yahidne area where they yesterday recaptured parts of Yahidne, we still see that the Russians are advancing generally. And especially since the Wagner is the primary force here in Bakhmut, that means that they still have enough to fight in this area. So generally, they still have ammunition. They may be rapidly decreasing the amount of ammunition they have. But in that case, then they would retreat for a better position so that they can spare their ammunition until they get more ammunition. But they're still keeping their advance. So something isn't right around this, about this specific issue, and it seems more like a PR public disinformation campaign rather than an actual issue. All right, I have talked a lot for this introduction start of the stream, so now I will move on to saying hello to everyone. I see I have 945 concurrent viewers, so welcome everyone to the stream. I'm happy that you all came here, and thank you all for coming, and I hope you all enjoy, and hello to every single one. I usually start my streams by saying hello to everyone in the chat. However, it seems that there is a lot of people already at the start, so I'll have a hard time remembering who I say hi to and all of that, and I don't want anyone to feel left out. So I'll skip that until the end, and then whoever's left at the end, I'll talk with you guys a little bit before ending the stream. So hello everyone and welcome to the stream, and let's go into the next part, which is what I imagine a lot of people are wondering about, and that is the offensive that was supposed to happen, or that I was talking about was going to happen but hasn't happened. So what do I believe in that regard? And I'll split that up into multiple parts. First of all, will the offensive happen? So I believe it will happen at some point. It seems to me that it will not happen this winter, unless it will happen this week, like by the end of February. It will not happen until at the very least next summer, as in this June. I don't believe they will do it in the spring, because we saw last time when they started the invasion 24th of February, they ended up having a lot of issues with the mud. Their supplies would get stuck. They had a lot of inexperience with all of this, so they essentially got stuck and had to retreat from Kiev due to bad supply. And the Russian forces claimed that it was just a diversion. Whether or not that is true, I will not get into it because I haven't really researched that much into it. But I do believe that they had a lot of issues with supply because of the terrain and the geographical issues that comes with spring. As all the snow and ice unfreezes, becomes water, and everything is just ingrained into becoming muddy. So the last window for an attack is actually today. As today and tomorrow, we'll see double-digit negative degrees in not just Kharkiv area, but also in the Sumy area, generally here in the eastern parts of the country, which is what is assumed to be where the Russian forces are concentrated. So essentially, Kharkiv, Sumy, Izium, Liman, this area here is all in the double-digit negatives tonight and tomorrow night. So if the war is going to or the offensive is going to happen soon, it will happen in either tonight, tomorrow night, or in these couple of days by the end of winter. If it doesn't happen then I do not believe it will happen until at the very least May, like a couple of months, because the terrain and the weather will be so bad that they wouldn't be able to make an effective offensive. Okay, so do I believe it will happen later if it doesn't happen now? Yes, it will happen eventually, because although this is something that works well for the Russians, they're grinding down the Ukrainians by attacking on the whole front line, slowly advancing, focusing heavily on artillery. At some point, one side will crack. This isn't a type of warfare that can just go on forever. We saw in the First World War. At some point, one country is going to crack, either politically, economically, or militarily. When it's a military collapse, it's similar to Russia in World War I, where the military collapsed because of the civil war. So I would actually say it's a political collapse. And essentially, the whole country gave whatever the Germans wanted as a result of that. Then we see on the Western fronts, Germany and France, and the British and everyone else, the Americans started coming as well at the end of the war, and the Russians or the Germans also had a political collapse. So essentially, we may see a political collapse in either of the countries, which is most likely going to be a determining factor, unless some sort of offensive completely overwhelms the military abilities of one country. Then it's most likely going to end up in a more political collapse. So which country is more likely to politically collapse? That is depending on whether or not the West is that invested into this war. And I say that because Russia has a lot of preparation. They prepared a lot for the economic and political fallout for this war. They have a lot of great relations with Africa and all of these countries in the third world countries. And then they also have good relations with India and China and all of these major political, population, and economic powers around the world. While in contrast, Ukraine has already lost half of its population, half of its economy, as a lot of people have fled the country. The eastern parts in the Donbas region and southern parts of Ukraine is the economic heartland of Ukraine, as there's a lot of natural resources, there's a lot of mines, and all of these things. So economically and population-wise, Ukraine has already been decimated, while Russia has lost their GDP went down by 2.1% for 2022. And generally, they have a lot of relations. They are able to build up their economy. They're able to become independent. All of these businesses, I heard earlier in the radio here in Denmark, there was a business here in Denmark that was still in Russia. And then they asked them, why didn't you leave Russia like all the other businesses? Then the leader of that business said, if we leave our business in this country, in Russia, then they'll just take our facilities, they'll take our technology, and they'll just produce it themselves. The Russian workers who worked in that company have all of the experience and knowledge necessary to create the products that they created at the same degree of essentially the same quality as they have been producing. So the difference is that as long as they stay, they'll take the money out of Russia. But if they leave, then the Russians would just get richer as the money would stay within Russia. And if we go back to the speech that Putin did yesterday, he was talking about or making fun of the oligarchs who all bought yachts and invested in foreign businesses, where he said that not a single Russian feels regret for or feels bad for all of the oligarchs who lost their yachts, who lost their international money due to the sanctions, as they chose to invest outside of Russia instead of inside of Russia. So Russia is doing a more independent or self-sustainable economy rather than or making use of the global economy. They are doing a lot of trade with other countries, but that is mainly selling natural resources and buying technologies, and especially from China, they're buying a lot of factory equipment so that they can increase the effectiveness of their factories, especially in the military industry. This is why the West is accusing China of sending aid to Russia, not because they're actually sending aid, but because they're selling a lot of mechanical and factory products that the Russians need to produce military equipment for the war. They are doing a joint chip construction, and so they're doing a lot of stuff to improve the economy and self-sustainability of Russia, as well as making Russia and China dependent on each other rather than doing trade with the West. So they just moved on to a different area rather than having all eggs in one basket. They're spreading them around. So generally, Russia would not have an economic collapse or a political collapse unless they lose militarily in Ukraine. So Ukraine's way to win this war is by military victory. They have to defeat Russia on the battlefield. That's the only way Ukraine wins this war. For Russia, just grinding down the Ukrainian army and destroying the equipment will be enough for them to win. So they just have to continue what they're doing and they'll win, because Ukraine is already completely dependent on NATO countries' deliveries of weapons. They cannot produce their own, as Russia just keeps destroying their factories with their missile strikes. So essentially, Ukraine is completely dependent on the West. If the West stops sending weapons or runs out of weapons to send, then Ukraine will have nothing to fight with. So we have to compare the production capacity of both sides. We see that the Russians are, for example, producing about 3 million shells a year, and they're upping that to 5 million, if I remember correctly. While the West, or the United States specifically, is producing about 15,000 a month, and they're upping that to 90,000 a month by 2025. And that goes up to about 1.2 million a year, about 1.1 million to 1.2 million a year. So that is still 1/5 of what Russia produces. Then we take all of the European capacity or the production as well, and it'll still be less than the Russians' production. So the Russians produce more. The West has higher quality, but the Russians produce more. And in the end, that adds up to them having the advantage, as although a shell that hits correctly can destroy 1 or 2 units, 2 shells can destroy 2 units. So the quality difference doesn't make up for the quantity difference. So for Ukraine to win, they essentially need a lot more weapons and a lot faster, to the point where the Europeans specifically become more vulnerable, because they have to send as much as they need to send for Ukraine to have an advantage. For example, the tanks, it seems to me that they will be receiving about 300 to 400 tanks from the West in total, and that is 300 to 400 compared to Russia maybe building 1,000 tanks in a year. And these tanks are the best that they have. They're building T-80 BVM, T-72 B3, or T-72 B4 actually. They upgraded them at the end of December 2022 version. Then they are building the T-90Ms. And then there are rumors that they are trying to make the T-14 combat ready so that they can use that as well. So essentially, we're seeing the Russians improving the quality of the equipment and producing them at a faster and high rate, while the West is still hesitant to sending weapons. Like, they're not even willing to send fighter jets yet, while just training the Ukrainian pilots will take at the very least a year. So unless they started training them at the start of the war, then they will not receive any fighter jets at the very least in half a year or a year, because the pilots need to be trained. And then they send them, and then it will probably just send 100 compared to Russians for 500. And then the Russians will probably build another 100 by that time. So the West's military reinforcement to Ukraine is half-hearted. It's not enough. It's not enough for them to win. It's not enough for them to lose. Or it's just more than what they need to not lose. So essentially, we're seeing a stalemate because of that. The West is half-heartedly helping Ukraine, while the Russians are just increasing their production to counteract that. And that is because, or the theory behind this is that I read in the book On War by Klaus von Clausewitz that when one side in a war increases their ability to fight, then the other side will try to match that. And then they will continue until essentially one side has the upper hand and the other side just cannot increase to that level. And that is when we see a collapse of one side. So essentially, this is a question of how far the West is willing to go. As soon as they aren't willing to go any further, then the Russians will have the upper hand and just take Ukraine. Because I do not believe that the West will do everything, because if they end up doing everything, just sending everything they have, then they're essentially might as well go into the war themselves. There's no reason for them to stay out if they're just sending everything they have. And the Russians they can mobilize more people, they can increase their production, they have a lot of space to increase or upscale their involvement in this war. And something the Putin's speech yesterday confirmed for me was that the Russians aren't just going to say, okay, we did what we can, we're going to go home. They're most definitely going for the win here. They absolutely want to win, and most likely at any cost, regardless of how many soldiers they lose, regardless of how many years it takes, regardless of how hard a hit the Russian economy is going to take. They are going to continue this until they win. The West is more questionable, because although they say that a loss for Russia or a win for Russia is a strategic defeat for the West and all of these things, Ukraine is still not a NATO country. It's not a European Union country. They're just continuing this until the next trend is coming along. When COVID was here, everything was about COVID. Now the war is here, everything is about the war. And then soon enough, at some point, they'll just go on to the next thing. Maybe China invades Taiwan, and then they'll just drop Ukraine and go help Taiwan. Or just generally, like, helping Taiwan by itself is enough for the US, with which it's focused to Taiwan, while the European Union will help Ukraine. And in that end, the Russians will completely outproduce the European Union, as they don't have the necessary industrial capacity to help Ukraine to the maximum, as switching their industry from civilian to military industry will have such a huge economic hit to the European countries that they will not be willing to sacrifice that much, as it will decrease the living standards of the citizens, and it will generally be a political disaster, as they will not be focusing on their own citizens, but they will be essentially valuing Ukrainian citizens higher than their own. And I know this is a not ethically okay thing to say, but it's the reality. Some citizens just generally don't care about this war. If I go around asking people in real life, what do you think of the war? Most of them will ask, oh, that war is still ongoing? I didn't know. I thought it finished months ago. Like, that is the point, that is the degree of the ignorance. When they talk about what's happening, they just keep questioning it. They're like, how is this still going on? How is this, or they're just too confused, as they never expected this to last for this long, and they aren't really following what's happening. Like, even in Russia, I believe that not even, like, probably the majority, but not more than 70% of the country is actually following the war. I think a lot of people are just completely disregarding it and just following whatever, like, seeing it on their Sunday evening news. Oh, so that is what happened this week, kind of thing. While the people like watching my videos every day, you guys are like the hardcore followers of this war, who'll be following everything, that you keep checking the news every day, multiple times a day. You keep seeing, okay, this happened, that happened. I don't know how many times I upload a video and then an hour later something else happens, and then people just go to my videos, oh, this happens, go make a video on it. Like, I'm very happy that you're willing to do that, but I don't really upload every hour. So don't expect me to upload just because something happened. Unless it's something big, then I'll definitely be going straight ahead and doing it. Similar to a couple of days ago, where I uploaded a video about the general front line, just a normal morning routine. And then something like the Russians advanced and took like the hill in Yahidne. Then I had to make a new video and just upload that like an hour after. And then I privated the old video because it essentially became irrelevant because of that thing happening. So yeah, people like us, we're just like 24 hours a day, we are on this and we just follow it to the point where if something happens and none of us knows it, it's too insane. I don't think that could ever happen. All right. So that is my general opinion. Then we will look at the latest news. I forwarded some things. First of all, we have this one. It is Wagner going around the Vuhledar front, where they show the type of terrain. Like, look, it isn't our fault. The terrain is terrible. Just like, you know. Wait, give me a second. There we go. Okay. So essentially, what I'm saying is, yeah. So I'm so bad at this. There you go. Okay. So essentially, they're saying it's not the general's fault. It's not the soldiers' fault. The terrain is just too bad for us to advance. It's a terrible place. But that is exactly my point. If the Russian general who's in control, or the DPR general who's in control of this area, obviously he knows the type of terrain that there is, and if he doesn't know, then he should really start thinking. But he knows what type of terrain there is. Thank you, Bunker Housing, for the donation. Thank you very much. By the way, please, if you donate, please do it over PayPal. YouTube takes a 30% cut. PayPal takes like 5%. So thank you very much for the donation. Either way, I'll be getting it. So I thank you a lot. But I very much prefer doing it over PayPal, as I'll receive the money 1 or 2 days after, rather than at the end of the month, and I get a 95% rate rather than a 70% rate. So thank you very much for the donation. I really appreciate it. Bunker Housing. Swedish crowns as well, so you're my neighbor. Hello. All right, so if you're a general and you don't know the terrain of this place the soldiers will be fighting, then you have failed as a commander. Like, already there, you have failed at the very first step. Before even starting the planning, you've completely failed. The second part is, if you know and you still make such a stupid strategy as this commander has done, where they just run through the fields and attack Vuhledar, knowing the Ukrainian defenses in Vuhledar are so heavily defended, all of the minefields and all of these things that are preventing them from the advance, and they just go straight ahead, then you have also failed as a commander, because you have failed to take the enemy into consideration when planning. You just planned like without thinking. You just, okay, I need to take this place, so I'll attack it head on. That's not a strategy. That's like a guy who's fighting in a boxing match and thinks, okay, I'll just hit him in the head. No, you have to think, do I do an uppercut? Do I do this or that? You have to think about the options you have, how you use them, all of these things. To me, who has seen how, or from direction they're attacking, how they're attacking, all of the videos I've seen, I can tell that this guy used like no strategy, and he just brute forced his way in, and then he got kicked out, because you can't just do that on a heavily fortified position. Okay, Bunkhausen, thank you very much for the second donation. And yes, I get why you would hate PayPal. I also hate them, but they give me a better opportunity than YouTube. So at the same time, although I hate them, I also like them. Yes, I am Danish. All right. So from this, we can see two things. The Russian commander is either incompetent because he didn't take the terrain into consideration, or he's incompetent because he didn't take the enemy into consideration. So either way, he's Excuse me. So either way, he's incompetent. That is what I have to say about this. Then we move on to this part where it has about what I was talking about earlier about the economy and all these things with the Chinese corporation. The Chinese diplomat of foreign affairs, Wang Yi, was visiting Putin earlier today. They were talking about how they were planning a meeting between Putin and Xi Jinping, and also about the international relations between the two countries, the cooperation between the two countries, the economic, political, all of these things between the two countries. So essentially, and here, there's every reason to believe that the volume of trade between Russia and China will reach 200 billion earlier than in 2024. So essentially, Russia, or my opinion on Putin, is that he generally, from my perspective, either he sucks at military affairs or he's just not involved with them, which is the right thing to do, because a political leader, a political leader who decides to intervene in military affairs is an incompetent one, because doing that is essentially you have less experience in that field, and then you're telling people within that field what to do. That's just stupid. Like, he can tell them what goals to go for and all of these things, but he shouldn't tell them how to do it. So I think on that part he's succeeded. But as a political leader, as well as economic leader, he's doing a great job, as both the Russian economy didn't fail as everyone expected, and at the same time he's increasing the political standing of Russia within third world countries. I remember reading an article a couple of weeks ago about the voting for condemnation of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. At the start, it was more in favor of the West, and then more and more time passed, and it became more and more in favor of Russia. So essentially, despite the war, despite of the destruction, despite of all the Western news, despite all of these things, the Russian position is improving with the world, with different countries. So Putin is, as a political leader, he is succeeding. As a military leader, there's debate there. But I can say he's definitely doing the right thing according to theoreticals. And thank you again, Bunker Housing, for the third donation. Thank you very much. Will you come to Buhanka chat? The guy that owned it is from MI5. Also, do not make a mess, and we send Army I over Isaac. Yeah, I'll be looking out for the Swedish army going through the ice, and I don't know what the Buhanka chat is. You'll have to fill me out on that later. So yeah, that is my opinion on that. Then we move on to the next part. Wait, there's no next part. Okay, so this will be a short stream. I'll just go on to move on to look at, give me a second. Okay, so now I'll just look at the chat. What does the chat have to say? Hello everyone. For starters, hello everyone. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat. I'll try and answer. So yeah, that would be nice if you had anything, or if you just want to say hello, then just say hello. Hello, Creeper the Killer. Hello, Alan Kopic. Hello, Eric Nilsson. Avoid Norway if you're traveling via pipeline. I mean, that would be a huge way around, but yeah, sure, I'll avoid the pipelines if I travel to Norway. Hello, Johnny Bravo. Weep, you are great at analysis. Hello. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Mattia 1 Sigmund. Hey mate, is the Russian offensive coming anytime soon in your opinion? I think there are two options, or three options. Let's just say, let's go with four options. The first option is that it happens like within a week before the end of the winter. That is the first option. I'll give that a low chance as they haven't done anything yet. So I'll give it a medium chance because they may want to do something for some reason. But yeah, so that's a medium chance. Then we have the second option, which is that they'll wait for summer. Then there's the third option, that they'll just continue as is and not do any offensives. Then there's the fourth option, which is that they just decide on the day of the anniversary, 24th of February. They're like, okay, we tried this for a year, didn't succeed. Let's just go take a break and just leave the war alone. We'll just go partying. So that is the fourth option. And that is probably like a 99% chance of happening because, like, who doesn't like to party? And if you couldn't tell, I was being sarcastic. Hello, Donald P. Hello from Ukraine. Hello from Denmark. And very cool that you are from Ukraine. Honestly, the thing that surprised me the most is that both Russians and Ukrainians actually watch my videos. For some reason, I just couldn't think that far that, oh yeah, Russians, Ukrainians, they would actually go watch my videos because they like don't know much more of what's happening than I do. So that it makes sense. Just because they're Russian, they don't know all of the Russian moves, and just because they're Ukrainians, they don't know everything that's happening. Hello, Blocky Tart. Hey, Weep Union. I heard from my dad that Telegram spies on its users. What do you think about that? I don't care, because first of all, Telegram is owned by a Russian guy. I think he lives in like the Middle East, but it's owned by a Russian guy. So I thought, okay, it's a Russian guy. If Russia wants to do something against me, they may like try to assassinate me or whatever, but I'll still have the protection of my country. So Russian spies have killed guys in the UK and other countries, but they haven't killed anyone in Denmark. So I feel safe enough. And then if he, for some reason, is bought by the West, then regardless, either way, they will probably not go for me. But if he's bought by the West and they decide, okay, go for me, because of whatever I say on Telegram, then I would just think, okay, whatever, that's life. But generally, I don't think anything will happen because of them spying on me. It's not like I'm planning on anything that anyone should care about. I'm just reporting on the war. And if they dislike that, then whatever. Life is life. If you take zero risks, then you probably aren't living. Okay, I got a super sticker by Joel Smith, $5. Thank you very much. And then we have Volcano Zombie. Thanks for these updates. They are very interesting. Thank you very much for the donations. And I see it's ISK. Is that like Icelandic crowns? Or what currency is that? But thank you very much for the donations. And thank you very much for the gratitude. What will happen in Bakhmut in future? What do you think? I think they will continue trying to push from the north and the south, and then eventually they'll just do an envelopment. If the Ukrainians retreat or not, I am not sure. Most likely they will not. I think this will be more of a repeat of Mariupol rather than a repeat of Lysychansk. But it could go either way, I think. Putin did another speech today. Yes, I know he was supposed to, but I don't think I saw anything about it. Or I haven't seen anything about it yet. Love from Caribbean. Thank you, Isaiah Fergus. Thank you, Weep Union, for keeping us updated with this ongoing war. You have an insane dedication. Thank you very much. I just made it a part of my daily schedule, and now it just feels natural to me. Like I said, you understand German. If you speak very, very slowly, then eventually I'll understand. Eventually. Possibly, maybe. Wanted, Weep Union, for leaking top secret military strategies. Exactly. What do you do? What do you think the outcome of the Russian spring offensive is going to be? I see two outcomes for a Russian offensive. One, is that the Russians have great success. They advance on every front, and then they reach some objectives. They'll probably fail at others, but they'll generally have good success. The second one is that they are completely unprepared and they haven't learned anything from this whole year of fighting, and then they just get stuck early on, and then they just like completely fail the offensive. I think it's a coin toss. Unfortunately, I'm not sure which side chose what, so I can't tell which one wins the coin toss, unfortunately. How do you think Zelensky will excuse losing Bakhmut after he's told everyone that they won't lose another city to Russia? They will eventually just like all the pro-Western people have already forgot that statement. I thought you are pro-Ukrainian propagandist. I am pro whatever my government tells me to do. Exactly. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to say that. Yeah, I don't take any sides. And if the government tells me do this or do that, then I don't really care. You keep saying toinkas. Coin toss. Dude. My English is great. I'm just letting you know I finished English. I'm not going to use it that much for like another year or two, other than speaking on this channel. I had some English friends, but I don't talk to them that often anymore because I'm too busy doing this. Pro-Reap Union propagandists, exactly. If you watch Reap Union, he's the greatest guy ever. You should probably donate to him, especially over PayPal. And you should just like, follow, subscribe, leave a like, all of that stuff. Because Reap Union is the way to go. It's the guy. He's the guy. Reap Union, do you think Ukraine will attack Transnistria for ammo? I do not believe so, because Transnistria is a part of Moldova. Internationally recognized. Ukraine attacking Transnistria would be attacking Moldova. There is the possibility that the new Moldovan government decides, okay, let's be friends with Ukraine and let's take it together, because this is an illegally occupied zone in Moldova. So they could either take it themselves or ask Ukraine for help, and then they will just give them like the ammunition as compensation. But I think that is hardly believable. That is more a conspiracy theory than anything else. 100 Norwegian crowns. Thank you very much, RN1441, for the donation, which is more likely. Russia has failed to launch the offensive because they can't keep the current front supplied. 2, Russia doesn't need to launch another one. The attrition goals are working. Okay, I think it could be a mix of both. A mix saying, one, that they haven't completely prepared for the offensive. They're just still working on it, still supplying or it's more difficult that they expected to both supply an offensive and supply the front line, which could be the reason for why Wagner is complaining about the supply issue in the first place. And then the second one, where they don't need to launch one, that is also possible, but I don't believe that, because why would they have gathered so many troops if they aren't going to use them? What do you think about Romania, besides our government, because it's trash? Well, I know a guy, he was Hungarian in Romania, and he kept saying that he is Hungarian, not Romanian, because he lives in Transnistria, which was, if you don't know history here, it has changed hands between Hungary and Romania so many times that it's a huge issue between the two countries. So that is the only impression I have of a Romanian guy. It's a Romanian guy who says he's Hungarian. And from him, he's pretty cool. He is pretty weird, but he's pretty cool. So my general stance for all Romanians and Hungarians is that they're pretty cool people. They're weird people. They aren't, and not weird in the sense that they are weird, but weird in the sense that it is not a culture or type of people that I'm very familiar with. So compared to the normal people I know, they are weird. Reap Union. Ukraine claims they attacked from Transnistria. False flag operation. Man, I can't go to the toilet. I would miss some informate. Joke, you're awesome. Well, you can just take your phone with you to the bathroom and watch there. See, genius. 2 stones with 1 rock. Wait, what? 2 birds with 1 rock. 2 birds with 1 stone? I think that's the right way. What is your opinion about the war equipment supplied by the US and EU? Free or Ukraine to pay later? Free. Ukraine will not be able to pay later unless they take a loan for like 100 billion years. Like we know from World War II, United States usually excuse all of the payment as long as they do like political changes that matches the US interests. So the country will be politically a puppet of the United States rather than requiring the money back. And then the US will just pay out the European countries to shut up. That's what they do historically. What is your opinion? Transylvania, not Transnistria. Yes, Transnistria. My bad. When 2 things sound similar, I usually mess them up. Have you noticed there's been very few Ukrainian tanks destroyed online in the last few days or weeks? Do you think they're trying to build a fist somewhere? That could be possible. It could also be possible that they're running low. A lot of possibilities. I don't think I can think enough about that. Like, they're getting a lot of Western tanks now because they're running low on tanks. If they had a lot of tanks, then they wouldn't need these Western tanks, because the quality of the Western tanks they're receiving is essentially the same quality as the tanks that they have already been using. So they are, of course, receiving tanks because they're running low on them, but they could also have enough for a fist, like do a breakthrough at some point or place. But yeah, essentially it's a question of whether or not they have and whether or not they're willing on all of these things. How you think could the war progress in the next month? Will Russia make the new offensive, and will offensive be able to make Ukraine collapse militarily? So the next couple of months, and you all know my predictions generally suck because I don't actually remember any one of them actually coming true. I remember one of the first few videos I did, I was talking about the Bakhmut front, and I think, you know what? Let's go and react to it live. The sound quality is terrible because I didn't have a microphone, I didn't have anything, and I was just starting out. This is a good many half a year ago that a lot of people, especially you guys, didn't watch me back then. There we go. Why is... No, not that one. How can Russia take Bakhmut? Alright, let's react to it. Desktop sound on. Alright, let's look at this. Hey guys, the quality is terrible as well, like video quality. Okay, never mind, it's fine. Okay. Also, I am not comfortable listening to my own voice. I think a lot of people already tell you that whenever someone was working with that. I generally edit my videos in 1.75 speed as well, so that the voice doesn't match what my expectations for my own voice is, so that I don't think think of it as my own voice. But this is going to be completely my voice, so I'm going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway, because let's go. Thank you for the $5 donation. Why doesn't Russia cut off the pipeline through Ukraine to punish the West? Because they're getting money from it. Why not? Why wouldn't you cut off your income source? And I'm not going to lie, that was the first video I watched on your channel. Very nice. All right, let's go. Hey guys, Wagner here. A quick disclaimer. My life... Hey guys. Good old days. This video went viral, and I would like to... Going viral was like 1,000 views back then. To share that the information about the Wagner military group and the Donetsk People's Republic taking or fighting around Obtyrne and Vesela Dolina are unlikely to be true. It is based on... It was false. Fake news, man. Reports, unconfirmed reports on the ground. But I've not been able to confirm those reports, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. It is unlikely to be true. I was watching DPA and History Legends back then, and then I was inspired by them. So a pinch of salt is from DPA. Go check him out.
Make your own research. Don't believe a guy on the internet. Okay.
And see, this like one of my first videos, and it's still true to this day. I'm a guy on the internet. I'm a random guy on the internet. You guys don't know me. Don't trust a random guy on the internet for like whatever is happening. Of course, I am probably smarter than most Western experts because they're too busy spreading propaganda than actually talking. But that's a topic for another time. For this one, don't trust a random guy on the internet. He's a retard. Maybe I shouldn't use that word because blah, blah, blah. He is not very smart. There you go.
Okay. Now, for this video, I'm going to be analyzing the situation based on the fact that it has not been taken. If it hasn't been taken, this is what I would do, command the troops to do. So first of all, the Wagner military group has been confirmed. This is confirmed 100%. Of taking the whole village of Poprovske. This leaves the Wagner group to have an opening to attack here around the outskirts of Bakhmut.
There you go. I got that right. They just went straight for eastern Bakhmut rather than taking all of these southern and northern villages. They just went straight ahead, and they have been at the eastern outskirts of Bakhmut for over half a year now. Like, this was July 26th. 26th. Some English things are difficult. Anyways, July 26th. That is over half a year ago. That is month 7 at the end of it. We are now at month 2 at the end of it. So that is 7 months ago. There we go. Math. Quick maths.
However, I would myself rather engage the Ukrainian forces outside of the city and go around fighting them between Bakhmut and Soledar. This way,
they also did that. Instead of going straight for Bakhmut and just like continuing going through Bakhmut, they started attacking to the northern areas around Pidorodne, and after taking Pidorodne, they started attacking Pereskovivka as well as Soledar from the southern flank, and then eventually they captured these areas.
The reinforcements from the Ukrainian side will be coming from the north to engage the fighting Russians with the Ukrainian defenses.
This is obviously, of course, true because as soon as the Russians keep advancing, they just kept sending more and more and more reinforcements to the city.
This will allow Russia to storm Siversk, as there will be a lack of reinforcements coming from here.
And this was not accurate because I didn't expect the Ukrainians to have such a large army. They just kept having infinite soldiers for some reason. So the Russians never had any opportunity to do anything in the north.
And with the oil refinery here, it's likely that they have a lot of armored vehicles in this area.
That is actually true. The largest concentration of armored vehicles by the Russian forces are around Donetsk, Lysychansk. These two areas are the ones with the largest concentration of armored vehicles, not just because of the oil refinery. They also have mechanical industries where they are doing maintenance on the tanks north of Lysychansk,
which will allow them to engage in these flatlands with air support. Now,
back when I still believed Russia actually had proper air support, but it seems they are still using airplanes as artillery, air artillery.
If they manage,
and yes, I call it air artillery because they have planes and they shoot from like 500 kilometers away rockets, and then they just use it as artillery rather than doing close air support and actual bombing runs. Wagner is doing close air support, which is why they're actually advancing.
To take Siversk as the Ukrainians are engaged elsewhere, they'll be able to attack from this side, which is from the north, from the east, and from the south. The north of Soledar, which will cut.
And this is also true. They started attacking in the northern area before actually taking Soledar, as taking Yakovlivka gave them the advantage they needed to take Soledar.
Soledar offered reinforcements from every side, by which the Ukrainians or the Russians can storm Soledar taking this city, cutting off all these defensive positions from the defensive line, which is around here. And then there's the highway around here. Now, if they manage to take Soledar, they'll have a defensive position to engage the Ukrainians in the open field north of Bakhmut, which will force the Ukrainians to fall back to Bakhmut, as fighting in an open field with less heavy equipment is suicide.
Okay, so here, I think I was fairly accurate with this. They started building some trenches here to the west of Soledar, but they were quickly overrun, so they started restoring southwards and northwards to Vasyukivka and to Bakhmut itself. Of course, I only say southwards to Bakhmut, because I was expecting Siversk to fall as well, here in the north. However, considering how they just had a lot of soldiers here to defend it, the Russians are now attacking from southwards towards the north, through Soledar to the north, and that is why we see some forces also retreat northwards to Vasyukivka, Rostolivka, and Vesele. While in this scenario, I just mentioned where they would retreat southwards to Bakhmut.
This will allow the Russians to engage the defensive line and close this cauldron south of Bakhmut, and finally engaging the Ukrainians outside of the city and proto-encircling the city.
Okay, so one issue and one correctness here. The first issue is that I expected them to get a foothold here in the east of Bakhmut and focus their forces northwards, but instead they focused their forces southwards, which is why we see that the Russian forces actually focused on just doing a frontal assault in the direction of Sermihivka, Kodelma, Satsev, and so on, and from the southern area, rather than doing this. But they did end up going around the northern area, Vasily Dolina and Opitne, as well as from the south to encircle Saitseve and Vershina. This allowed the Russian forces to force the Ukrainians to retreat from these villages, otherwise they would be completely encircled. And that is also across the Bakhmutovka River, which means that the Ukrainians actually received a lot of casualties retreating from these areas, and the Russian forces captured the southern part, after which they started attacking the direction of Opitne and holding the river line in general, after which they then advanced westwards across the railways into Klishchivka and advanced northwards now in the direction of Joseph Yar as well as Klishchivka. And at the same time, they also managed to do this here in the north, allowing them to advance towards Bakhmut from the north, which means that they captured both the southern and the northern parts and are now doing an envelopment maneuver, exactly like I said. So I predicted the Russian tactics from back then, and it seems that the Ukrainians also did, because they seriously fortified Soledar. This allowed the Russians to have a very hard time capturing Soledar. As we know, throughout this whole, like from July until today, the Russians managed to capture the southern part because there's like no major reinforced position. But to the north, they spent half a year attacking Soledar only. So Soledar took half a year for the Russian forces to capture. In contrast, this area to the south was captured in like 3 months. So we see here that the Soledar area was very heavily fortified, which means that the Ukrainian forces actually expected this situation. But eventually the Russians, with their superior firepower, eventually took Soledar.
Now, this is all based on the fact that Ukrainians don't have that many soldiers to reinforce with in.
Exactly, that was my expectations. I didn't expect them to have this many troops to reinforce with, and that is why my analysis was flawed. But now today, knowing this, of course I would have said something different, but in the end it was the same strategy, and that is to envelop Bakhmut.
A case of such things happening, as most of their units are inside the two cauldrons to the north around Siversk.
Anyways, that's all for this thing. I'll not react to more. Okay, so there I compared. And what are you guys' verdicts? Rate from 1 to 10. How good was my analysis, which was one of my first videos ever? Like, come on, you gotta have a rating. I commented on it. I showed it to you. Come on, show me. What do you say? 795. 794, 8, 10, 8, 7, 6, 7, 7.5, 4, 8, 69, 6, 7, 7, 8. I would say the general point seems to be around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 7, 0.1, 9.8, 11, 8.5. Oh yeah, poll. That is true. How do I make poll? Start a poll. Wait, what should the poll be? How many options can I add? Okay, only 4 options. So the 4 options will be very bad, bad, good, very good. There you go. Come on, guys, show me what you got. Very epic. Let's see. So far, it seems that it is very close between good and very good, while bad and very bad is far from it. Come on, where are all the haters at? See, this is what I say. A lot of people seem to have, like, before starting YouTube, I kept thinking, if I one day become popular, will I be able to cope with all of the aggressive comments, hate comments, all of these things? And then now, after I started, I just thought that all of the YouTubers who kept complaining about that, either their content must have really sucked, or they just get affected very easily. Because, as we can see with this poll, that is generally the same results I get from my viewers. Very drastic positive influence. And then there's like the few who keep coming with hate comments. Like, this is like, there's no issues with this. I have no issues with this. In real life, I get way more hate than the few hate comments I get here. Of course, there's a lot of weird people who are like, you're so stupid, you don't know anything, you're pro-Ukrainian shill, you're pro-Russian shill, propaganda, blah, blah, blah. I just think, in the end, I'm here making money off of that, and he's there, like, commenting, giving me a dislike, improving my what's it called, interaction, so that I get promoted to more people. So in the end, he's just giving me more money. So thank you for hating on me. Also, thank you to the 3 people who sent me on donations on PayPal. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to the ones who donated to me on our YouTube. Although I don't really do so many ads on my live streams, you guys still made it more profitable, or about as profitable as if I made a video. So thank you very much for that. And there we go. 55% said yes or good. 35% said very good. That is an 80% of 90% positive. Then we have 6% bad and 4% very bad, 10% negative. And that is a what's it called? My brain just completely fried. That is a 90% positive influence on one of my very first videos. And I believe I've become better since then, so that's epic. The question is, was my analysis from July 27th good or bad, or very good? Now to get YouTube banned. Let's see if honestly, I don't care if I get YouTube banned after the war ends, but please don't do it before the war ends, because before the war ends, I still have something to say. After the war ends, I don't really care. Thank you, Lance, for the 5 SAR. I don't know what SAR is, but thank you very much. Saudi Arabian Rial. Okay, thank you. 5 Saudi Arabian Rial. Thank you very much. Okay, so all my viewers are dying because I'm talking too much. Just kidding. They come here. You're here for me to talk, so I'm talking. Anyways, what do you say? I say end poll. No more influence on that. Got years before this all ends, then I have a job for years. Okay, oh yeah, that was it. Okay, brain function. Let's see what happens first. Me getting banned on YouTube or getting 100,000 subscribers. What was the poll about? The poll was about whether my analysis from 6 months ago, 7 months ago, was good, bad, very good, very bad. All right, so I think that is going to be all for this stream. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed and have a great day. See ya.